We're counting down the 10 most controversial action movies of the 1980s that were banned around the world. From films that triggered police raids and legal trials to blockbusters pulled from entire countries for their political punch. And trust me, nothing tops the shock awaiting at number 1. But before we get to those infamous headlines, let's kick things off with a blood-soaked legend. In the 10th place, Anthropophagus set the tone for the decade's bloodiest controversies. Released in 1980 and directed by Joe D'Amato, this Italian shocker was notorious for scenes of cannibalism so graphic they triggered immediate prosecution under the UK's Obscene Publications Act. The British press labeled it a video nasty, and police raids swept up tapes from video shops across the country. Uncut versions vanished, replaced by heavily edited reissues that gutted the infamous gore. But the legend only grew. Collectors scoured flea markets for original VHS cassettes, driving prices sky high. Anthropophagus wasn't just banned, it became a forbidden prize in the underground world of 1980s horror fandom. Number 9. Cannibal Apocalypse pushed boundaries in a way few action horror hybrids dared. Directed by Antonio Margheriti in 1980, this film fused Vietnam War trauma with gut-churning cannibal violence. But the outrage didn't stop at gore. British censors zeroed in on a notorious rat-killing scene, so much so that later UK releases were only allowed after the offending footage was cut. The BBFC's official lists document these edits, marking a rare moment when moral panic over animal cruelty collided with the era's obsession over screen violence. For many, Cannibal Apocalypse wasn't just another video nasty, it was a lightning rod for debates about real harm versus movie make-believe. 8th place, Cannibal Ferox ignited a firestorm that reached far beyond the usual grindhouse crowd. Directed by Umberto Lenzi in 1981, the film's reputation for real animal killings and relentless cruelty put it at the center of Europe's censorship crosshairs. Critics blasted it for misogyny, with feminist groups demanding outright bans. The British Board of Film Classification refused certification, and authorities in Germany, Norway, and Australia followed suit, forcing heavy edits or banning it altogether. Even today, uncut prints are rare, fueling debates over whether Cannibal Ferox is exploitation trash or a raw indictment of society's appetite for violence. Back then, though, it was simply too much for censors to stomach. Number 7. The Evil Dead didn't just flirt with controversy, it ran straight into the teeth of it. Released in 1981, Sam Raimi's low-budget horror-action hybrid stunned audiences with its relentless pace and infamous tree assault sequence, a scene that sent censors scrambling. The British Board of Film Classification refused to let it pass without heavy edits, targeting the film's sexualized violence for the chopping block. Early European distributors balked, with some countries banning the movie outright, and others demanding so many cuts that the story barely held together. But instead of fading away, The Evil Dead thrived in the shadows. Bootleg tapes, midnight screenings, and word-of-mouth legend kept its reputation alive. Years later, uncut reissues and director interviews cemented its status as a cult classic, proof that what censors tried to bury only grew more powerful in the dark. Number 6, Mad Max 2. The Road Warrior wasn't just a blockbuster, it was a warning shot that mainstream action could still be too much for censors. Released in 1981 under the direction of George Miller, the film's high-octane chases and bleak, lawless wastelands electrified audiences worldwide. But in New Zealand, authorities saw something else, a dangerous blueprint for real-world chaos. The country's film board banned it outright, citing the relentless violence and fear that young viewers might imitate the film's anarchic road gangs. Classification files from the era reveal a deep anxiety about copycat behavior, with headlines warning of a spike in reckless driving. What started as a post-apocalyptic thrill ride became a national debate over media influence, proof that even big-budget Hollywood action could run afoul of the censors when the stakes felt too real. Number 5. Scanners detonated a new kind of controversy when it hit theaters in 1981. Directed by David Cronenberg, this Canadian sci-fi action horror became infamous for a single, unforgettable moment: the head explosion scene. No quick edits, no suggestion, just a full-on practical effects masterpiece that sent shockwaves through audiences and censors alike. In the UK, Australia, and parts of Europe, the film faced bans or heavy edits, with censors zeroing in on the realism of its violence rather than the story's psychic battles or corporate conspiracies. Cronenberg himself defended the effect as pure movie magic, but the uproar over whether such brutality belonged on screen led to trimmed versions for TV and VHS. Even decades later, Scanners stands as a testament to how a single, expertly crafted effect could push the boundaries of censorship and redefine what was considered too real for public consumption. Number 4. Cannibal Holocaust didn't just cross a line, it obliterated it. Released in 1980 and directed by Ruggero Deodato, this film's blend of staged violence and real animal killings triggered a global uproar. But the fallout went beyond censors and angry letters. Italian authorities arrested Deodato himself, convinced the film was a genuine snuff movie. For weeks, prosecutors demanded proof that the actors were still alive, forcing Deodato to bring his cast into court to prove no one had actually died. Even after the murder charges were dropped, the film stayed banned in Italy for years under obscenity and animal cruelty laws. The infamous turtle killing scene is still cut from most releases. Censorship boards in the UK, Australia, and Germany followed suit, issuing outright bans or demanding massive edits. Cannibal Holocaust became a cautionary tale, proof that when fiction feels too real, the law steps in and a movie can become a criminal case. Coming to the top 3, Escape from New York delivered a vision of urban decay that rattled more than just moviegoers. Released in 1981 and directed by John Carpenter, the film dropped audiences into a near-future Manhattan-turned-maximum security prison, a city ruled by gangs, abandoned by hope, and policed with lethal force. Kurt Russell's Snake Plissken became an anti-hero for the age, but censors didn't see a cool action flick. They saw a blueprint for social collapse. In Germany, authorities indexed the film as harmful to youth, cutting minutes of shootouts and torture. Sweden and Finland demanded edits, targeting scenes of mass executions and violence against police. Critics argued the film's nihilism, its bleak, no-way-out worldview, posed a threat to the social order, especially as Cold War anxieties simmered. The initial backlash faded, but Escape from New York's reputation as a subversive cult classic only grew, setting the stage for even more overtly political bans in the final 2 entries. Number 2, Rambo: First Blood. Part 2 detonated a Cold War controversy that went far beyond the box office. Released in 1985, Stallone's muscle-bound sequel didn't just rake in cash. It drew the wrath of governments from Moscow to Berlin. Soviet authorities banned the film outright, calling it anti-Soviet propaganda and a threat to socialist values. Eastern Bloc countries followed suit, with official notices barring screenings and underground VHS copies passed hand-to-hand in smoky back rooms. In Germany, the Federal Department for Media Harmful to Young Persons indexed the film, marking it as dangerous for youth and slapping restrictions on its sale. Australian censors demanded edits to scenes of torture and mass shootings, while parliamentary debates raged over whether Rambo glorified vigilante justice. Even in India and Canada, local boards trimmed the violence, fearing public backlash. Rambo 2 wasn't just an action movie. It was a diplomatic incident, a film so politically charged that it became a symbol of Cold War paranoia and state-level censorship. If you thought urban chaos could get a movie banned, wait until you see what happens when Hollywood takes aim at world superpowers. And finally, in first place, Red Dawn delivered the most explosive controversy of the decade. Released in 1984 and directed by John Milius, this film imagined the unthinkable: Soviet and Cuban troops invading American soil, with a group of teenagers fighting back in guerrilla warfare. The premise alone sent shockwaves through the Cold War world. Soviet authorities issued a blanket ban, calling it dangerous propaganda and warning that it demonized the USSR. Eastern Bloc countries quickly followed suit. Red Dawn was locked out of theaters, home video, and even diplomatic screenings. Official memos from Moscow condemned the film as militaristic fantasy, accusing Hollywood of fueling anti-Soviet hysteria. But the story didn't end at the border. Bootleg 5HS copies spread through black markets in Poland, East Germany, and beyond, turning Red Dawn into forbidden fruit for curious viewers behind the Iron Curtain. No other action film of the 1980s triggered such a coordinated international ban or left such a lasting mark on Cold War culture. From the raw gore of Anthropophagus to the Cold War paranoia fueling Red Dawn, these 10 controversial action movies of the 1980s revealed just how far filmmakers pushed and how hard authorities pushed back. Across all entries, the common thread was a clash between creative excess and societal boundaries. Whether it was animal cruelty, sexual violence, or outright political provocation. The most shocking cases, like Cannibal Holocaust, where the director faced arrest, or Rambo: First Blood Part 2 and Red Dawn banned across the entire Eastern Bloc, show how action cinema could spark not just outrage, but international incidents. What sets these films apart isn't just their content, but the scale and reasons for their censorship. From moral panic in the UK's video nasty era, to fears of youth corruption, to full-scale geopolitical fallout. In the end, the list proves that 1980s action films weren't just entertainment. They were lightning rods for the anxieties of their time, leaving a mark on both movie history and global culture.